A billionaire CEO meets a pregnant girl kicked out by her parents, and he marries her by midnight. It starts on a freezing winter night when a powerful man, used to getting anything he wants, kneels down to help a girl sleeping on the cold ground. She has nothing but a suitcase and the baby she refuses to give up. What begins as an act of kindness spirals into a scandal that shakes the city. Her parents want the baby. The world thinks he's hiding something. And behind the cameras, a secret from his past could destroy everything. Why would a billionaire risk his empire for a girl with nothing? And when the truth finally comes out, will their marriage be the greatest mistake of his life, or the only thing that saves them both? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The winter wind howled through the concrete canyons of New York City, carrying flurries of snow that danced beneath the yellow glow of street lamps. Ethan Harlow sat in the back of his black Mercedes, his fingers drumming against his leather briefcase as he reviewed the evening's board meeting in his mind. The warmth of the car's interior couldn't chase away the chill that had settled in his chest, the same chill that appeared every time he worked late into the night, alone with his thoughts. "That will be all for today, James," he said to his chauffeur as the car pulled up to the curb. "Go home to your family." The older man's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "Are you sure, sir? The weather's getting worse." "I'll be fine. My apartment is just around the corner." Ethan managed a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. As he stepped out into the biting cold, his polished shoes crunching in the fresh snow, something caught his attention. Through the swirling snowflakes, he spotted a figure huddled on a park bench. Most people would have hurried past, eager to escape the freezing temperature. But something made Ethan pause. The figure was a young woman, her arms wrapped protectively around her very pregnant belly. She wore a thin jacket that was nowhere near warm enough for the weather, and beside her feet sat a small, worn suitcase. Even from where he stood, Ethan could see her shoulders shaking, from cold or tears. He wasn't sure which. His chest tightened as memories flooded back. Memories he usually kept locked away behind spreadsheets and business meetings. For a moment, he saw Sarah sitting in their garden, her hands resting on her growing belly as she smiled up at him. The image vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only an ache where his heart should be. Before he could think better of it, Ethan found himself walking toward the bench. The young woman didn't notice his approach, too focused on trying to keep warm. Up close, he could see that her face was red from crying, her dark hair dusted with snowflakes. "Miss?" he said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Are you all right?" She looked up, revealing eyes that were both frightened and defiant. Despite her obvious distress, there was a quiet dignity in the way she held herself. "I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. "Please, I don't want any trouble." Ethan immediately shrugged off his expensive wool overcoat. "You're freezing," he said, draping it around her shoulders. The coat nearly swallowed her small frame. "I can't take your coat," she protested weakly, though her fingers clutched the warm fabric. "You already have," he said with gentle humor, kneeling beside the bench so they were at eye level. Snow soaked through the knees of his $1,000 suit, but he barely noticed. "I'm Ethan Harlow. Will you tell me what brings you out here on a night like this?" She hesitated, studying his face as if searching for something. Whatever she saw must have reassured her, because she took a shaky breath and said, "I'm Lila Grace." "It's nice to meet you, Lila," Ethan said. He noticed how she kept one hand protectively on her stomach, even as she shivered. "My parents." She started, then had to pause to wipe away fresh tears. "They gave me an ultimatum today. Her voice caught, either I give up my baby for adoption or I had to leave. They said they wouldn't have their reputation ruined by." She couldn't finish the sentence. Ethan's jaw tightened. The world suddenly felt colder, and it had nothing to do with the weather. "So you chose your child," he said softly. Lila nodded, her chin lifting slightly despite her tears. I couldn't give up my baby. I know everyone thinks I'm being foolish, that I'm too young, that I'm throwing my life away. But this little one," She touched her stomach gently. "This is my baby. How could I?" "You don't have to explain," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. He thought of Sarah again, of how fiercely she had loved their unborn child, of all the plans they had made. The accident that took them both had left him hollow, focused only on building his empire as if success could fill the void they left behind. But looking at Lila now, seeing her courage in choosing her child over everything else, something stirred in his chest, something he thought had died years ago. "What's your plan?" he asked gently. Lila gave a watery laugh that held no humor. "I don't really have one," she admitted. "I have some money saved from my job at the bookstore, but not enough for a place to stay. I thought maybe I could find a shelter, but they're all full because of the weather. I just need to make it through tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure something out." The snow was falling harder now, the temperature dropping by the minute. Ethan could see Lila's lips starting to turn blue despite his coat, and the way she tried to hide her shivers made his decision for him. He stood up, brushing the snow from his knees, and extended his hand to her. "You don't have to sleep here tonight." Lila stared at his offered hand, confusion and wariness crossing her face. "I don't understand." "I have a guest apartment in my building," Ethan explained. "It's warm, safe, and it's yours if you want it. No strings attached. Just for tonight, or until you find your feet. Your choice." "Why?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Ethan's hand remained steady, even as his heart ached with memories. "Because someone once taught me that every life is precious," he said quietly. "Because no one should have to choose between their child and a warm place to sleep. And because sometimes we all need someone to extend a helping hand." Snow continued to fall around them as Lila looked at his offered hand, then up at his face. In his eyes, she saw no pity, only understanding and a genuine desire to help. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her small hand in his. The black town car idled quietly by the curb, its exhaust creating wispy clouds in the frigid air. Ethan guided Lila toward it with a gentle hand at her elbow, careful not to rush her as she took uncertain steps. Her small suitcase seemed to weigh heavily in her other hand. "Here, let me take that," Ethan offered, reaching for the weathered case. Lila clutched it closer instinctively. "It's all I have," she whispered, then immediately looked embarrassed by the admission. "And it will stay right beside you," Ethan assured her, opening the car door. "Ladies first." The interior of the car was blessedly warm, the leather seats heated to ward off the winter chill. Lila sank into the plush seat, still wrapped in Ethan's oversized coat, her suitcase held protectively in her lap. "James," Ethan addressed his driver as he slid in beside her. "We'll head to the penthouse." "Yes, sir," the driver responded professionally, pulling away from the curb with smooth precision. Lila stared out the tinted windows at the passing city lights, her reflection ghostly pale against the glass. "I've never been in a car this nice before," she admitted softly. "First time for everything," Ethan replied with a gentle smile. He noticed how she kept one hand pressed against her stomach, as if reassuring herself, or perhaps her baby, that everything would be all right. The drive passed in comfortable silence, the car's quiet engine and excellent suspension creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. When they pulled up to a towering glass and steel building, Lila's eyes widened. "You live here?" "The top 2 floors," Ethan confirmed, helping her out of the car. "Thank you, James. Good night." The doorman tipped his hat respectfully as they entered the marble lobby. "Good evening, Mr. Harlow." Inside the private elevator, Lila's reflection was multiplied infinitely in the mirrored walls. She looked small and lost in Ethan's expensive coat, her honey blonde hair tangled from the wind, her face pale but beautiful in its vulnerability. The elevator opened directly into Ethan's penthouse, and Lila gasped softly. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering city below, while tasteful modern furniture and warm lighting created an atmosphere of understated luxury. It's like something from a movie," she breathed. Ethan watched her take it all in, seeing his home through fresh eyes. "The guest suite is this way," he said, leading her down a hallway. There's an ensuite bathroom with everything you might need. Why don't you take a hot shower while I order some food? You must be hungry." Lila nodded, still seeming dazed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know how I'll ever repay." "No need." Ethan cut her off gently. "The shower controls are simple. Left for hot, right for cold. Take your time." He left her to settle in, pulling out his phone to order from his favorite Italian restaurant that he knew would still be delivering at this hour. As he placed the order, he could hear the shower starting up. Walking to his sister's old room, kept exactly as she'd left it before the illness took her 5 years ago, he selected a soft nightgown from the dresser. Rebecca had been about Lila's size, and somehow he knew she would have wanted her clothes to help someone in need. When Lila emerged from the bathroom 45 minutes later, her skin was pink from the hot water, her damp hair falling in waves around her shoulders. The nightgown fit her perfectly, though it couldn't quite disguise her small baby bump. "I hope you like Italian," Ethan said, gesturing to the spread he'd laid out on the dining room table. "I ordered enough options to make sure there'd be something you'd enjoy." Lila's eyes widened at the array of containers. "This is too much," she protested. "You're eating for two," Ethan reminded her with a small smile. "Please, sit." As they filled their plates with pasta, bread, and salad, Ethan noticed how Lila seemed to relax incrementally with each passing moment. The warmth and food were working their magic, bringing color back to her cheeks. "Tell me about yourself," he said softly, not wanting to startle her back into discomfort. "What were your plans before?" "Everything." Lila twirled pasta around her fork thoughtfully. "I was in college," she said. "Education major. I've always wanted to be a teacher." A small smile touched her lips. "I love the idea of helping children discover their potential, watching their faces light up when they understand something new." "That's a noble calling," Ethan said sincerely. Her smile faded. "My parents. They said I was throwing everything away. That no one would hire an unwed mother as a teacher. That I was destroying their reputation in the community." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. "Maybe they're right about the teaching part, but I couldn't. I couldn't give up my baby. Not even for my dreams." "Your parents are wrong," Ethan said, his voice firm but gentle. "Being a mother doesn't disqualify you from being an excellent teacher. If anything, it might make you a better one." Lila looked up at him, hope flickering in her eyes. "Do you really think so?" "I do," he assured her. "The world needs more teachers who understand that every child is precious." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Lila spoke again. "The nightgown, did it belong to your wife?" "My sister," Ethan corrected softly. "Rebecca. She passed away 5 years ago." "I'm so sorry," Lila said, genuine compassion in her voice. "Thank you for sharing it with me. I'll take good care of it." Ethan nodded, unable to speak for a moment as emotions threatened to overwhelm him. He'd been alone for so long, focused solely on building his business empire, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to share a meal with someone, to have simple conversation, to help another person. As they finished eating, Lila folded her hands in her lap and closed her eyes. Her lips moved silently in prayer, and Ethan found himself watching her, fascinated by her simple faith. Here was someone who had lost everything: her family, her home, her security, and yet she still found reason to give thanks. A profound sense of peace settled over him, something he hadn't experienced since before Sarah's death. It was as if the sharp edges of his grief had softened just a little, in the presence of this young woman's quiet strength and unwavering faith in the face of adversity. He realized with surprise that for the first time in years, his vast penthouse didn't feel empty. Somehow, Lila's presence had transformed it from a showcase of his success into something that felt more like a home. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the guest bedroom, casting a warm, golden glow across Lila's face. She stirred slowly, momentarily confused by the softness of the mattress beneath her and the silky smoothness of the sheets. The events of the previous night came rushing back as she opened her eyes fully, taking in the elegant furnishings of the room that was larger than her entire college apartment had been. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, accompanied by what smelled like warm pastries. Lila's stomach rumbled in response. She carefully pushed herself up, one hand instinctively cradling her small baby bump as she swung her legs over the side of the bed. The borrowed nightgown from Ethan's sister felt soft against her skin as she padded barefoot across the plush carpet. She found her clothes from yesterday, now cleaned and neatly folded on a chair near the door. After changing quickly, she followed the enticing smell to the kitchen. Ethan stood at the gleaming counter, already dressed impeccably in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than a year's worth of her college tuition. He was scanning something on his phone while sipping from a coffee mug, but looked up when she entered. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying that same gentle politeness from the night before. "I hope you slept well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Lila admitted, feeling shy in the bright morning light. "Thank you again for everything." Ethan gestured to the spread on the counter: fresh croissants, fruit, yogurt, and what appeared to be still, warm muffins. "Please, help yourself. The coffee's fresh, or there's tea if you prefer. And orange juice. It's good for." He trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward her middle. A small smile tugged at Lila's lips. "Orange juice would be wonderful. Thank you." They settled into a surprisingly comfortable breakfast routine, with Ethan reading news on his tablet while Lila savored every bite of the fresh pastries. The peaceful moment was shattered by the sharp buzz of Ethan's phone, followed immediately by several more in rapid succession. Ethan's expression darkened as he read the incoming messages. His jaw tightened, and Lila noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped his phone. "Is everything all right?" she asked softly. Instead of answering, Ethan turned his tablet toward her. Lila's heart sank as she saw the headlines splashed across various news sites and gossip blogs. Billionaire CEO's midnight rendezvous with mysterious pregnant woman. Ethan Harlow's secret love child? Harlow Industries heir on the way? Sources say. The articles were accompanied by grainy but clear photos of Ethan helping her into his car the night before, and another of them entering his building together. The photographers had managed to capture her tear-stained face and obvious pregnancy, along with Ethan's protective stance as he shielded her from the cold. "I'm so sorry," Lila whispered, feeling sick to her stomach. "I never meant to cause trouble for you." Ethan's phone rang again, and this time he answered it, his voice clipped and professional. "Yes, Richard, I saw them." "No, it's not what you think. I understand the board's concerns." Lila watched as he paced the length of the kitchen, one hand running through his perfectly styled hair in frustration. She could hear the agitated voice on the other end of the line, though she couldn't make out the words. "The company's reputation is not at risk," Ethan said firmly. "I helped someone in need, nothing more. No, I don't need a PR team to spin this." "Yes, I understand the stock implications." While Ethan continued his tense conversation, Lila slipped quietly back to the guest room. Her hands trembled as she carefully folded Rebecca's nightgown, smoothing out every wrinkle before placing it on the bed. She collected her few belongings and put them back in her small suitcase, trying to make the bed look as pristine as it had been before she slept in it. When she returned to the kitchen, Ethan was ending his call. "Listen, Richard, I'll handle this my way. The board will just have to trust me on this one." He hung up and turned to find Lila standing there with her suitcase. "I should go," she said quietly, struggling to keep her voice steady. "You've been so kind, but I can't let you risk everything you've built just because you showed compassion to a stranger." Ethan stared at the tablet screen, where more headlines were appearing by the minute. His empire, built carefully over years of dedicated work, was being threatened by one simple act of kindness. The board members' warnings echoed in his head, about stock prices, about investor confidence, about the conservative family image Harlow Industries had always maintained. Lila set the carefully folded nightgown on the counter. "Thank you for giving me shelter when I needed it most," she said softly. "I'll never forget your kindness." The morning sunlight that had seemed so warm and promising earlier now felt harsh and exposing as it streamed through the windows. Ethan stood frozen, caught between the world he'd built and the simple human connection he'd found in helping Lila. The headlines glared up at him from the tablet screen, demanding his attention, while Lila waited quietly by the door, ready to disappear back into the cold city rather than cause him any more trouble. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken words and complicated emotions. Outside, far below the penthouse windows, the city buzzed with the growing scandal, but in that moment, time seemed suspended as Ethan stared at the headlines while Lila prepared to walk away. "I really can't stay," Lila insisted, her hand gripping the handle of her small suitcase. "You've done more than enough already." Ethan crossed the room in 3 quick strides, placing his hand gently but firmly on the door before she could open it. "And where exactly do you plan to go?" Lila's shoulders slumped slightly. I'll figure something out. Maybe there's a shelter." "No." The word came out sharper than he intended, making Lila jump. Ethan softened his tone. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you wander the streets in your condition. Not in good conscience. But your company, your reputation, will survive." Ethan grabbed his coat from the hook by the door. "Right now, we both need to clear our heads and get some real food. I know a place downtown, quiet, family-owned, great pancakes. We can talk there." Lila hesitated, but her rumbling stomach betrayed her. Despite the generous breakfast earlier, she was eating for 2 now. "You're sure?" "Positive." He helped her into her coat, the worn fabric, a stark contrast to his tailored wool overcoat. "The diner's been there forever. Best coffee in Manhattan, though that's not saying much." The ride down in the private elevator was silent, both lost in their thoughts. Ethan's driver was waiting with the car, and soon they were weaving through mid-morning traffic. Lila watched the city scroll past her window, the familiar streets somehow looking different from inside the luxury vehicle. The diner was exactly as Ethan described, a cozy corner establishment with worn vinyl booths and slightly faded photos on the walls. A bell chimed as they entered, and the warmth of cooking food enveloped them. Several customers looked up, then quickly back to their meals, though a few lingered on Ethan's expensive suit. "Back booth," Ethan said quietly to the hostess, who nodded knowingly. He guided Lila with a light touch to her elbow, letting her slide into the more protected inside seat while he took the outside, his back to most of the restaurant. An older waitress approached with coffee and menus. "The usual, Mr. Harlow?" "Please, Marie." "And whatever the lady would like." Lila ordered pancakes with extra butter, and Ethan couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. The tension in her shoulders had started to ease when the diner's bell chimed again. "Lila Grace." The sharp voice cut through the quiet murmur of the diner like a knife. Lila's face went pale as she looked past Ethan to see her parents standing in the entrance, their expressions thunderous. Margaret Grace strode toward their booth, Charles close behind. "So, this is where you've been hiding, with him?" She spat the last word like it was poison. Ethan rose smoothly to his feet, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to their obvious anger. "Mr. and Mrs. Grace, I presume? I'm Ethan Harlow. We know exactly who you are," Charles Grace snarled, "taking advantage of our vulnerable daughter. Did you think your money would protect you from the consequences?" The diner had gone silent. Every eye was on their booth, and Lila seemed to shrink into herself, one hand protectively covering her stomach. "I assure you, nothing improper has occurred," Ethan said, his voice steady but firm. "Your daughter needed help." "Help?" Margaret's laugh was bitter. "Is that what you're calling it? We saw the pictures in the papers. Taking her to your penthouse in the middle of the night?" "Because you left her sleeping on a park bench," Ethan replied, his controlled tone carrying an edge of steel. "In freezing temperatures, while pregnant with your grandchild." Charles stepped closer, jabbing a finger at Ethan's chest. "Don't you dare lecture us about our daughter. We were teaching her responsibility. By abandoning her?" Ethan's voice remained level, but his eyes flashed. "That's not teaching responsibility. That's cruelty. How dare you?" Margaret hissed. Several customers had pulled out their phones, recording the confrontation. "You have no right to judge us. You don't know anything about our family." "I know that your daughter deserves dignity and compassion," Ethan said. "I know she's shown incredible strength in choosing to protect her child. even at great personal cost. And I know that true family supports each other, especially in difficult times. Lila's eyes filled with tears, but she sat straighter, drawing strength from Ethan's words. Charles Grace's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Listen here, you sanctimonious bastard. You think you can waltz in and play hero? We'll destroy you. I have friends in the media, in the legal system. One word from me about how you preyed on our innocent daughter. Dad, stop, Lila's voice cracked. That's not what happened. Be quiet, Margaret snapped. You've caused enough scandal already. Ethan's expression hardened. Mrs. Grace, I suggest you moderate your tone when speaking to your daughter. Charles stepped even closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. End this now. Cut old ties with our daughter, or I promise you'll regret it. By the time I'm done, your precious company won't recover from the scandal. Every newspaper, every TV station will run stories about how you took advantage of a pregnant girl half your age. Your board won't stand behind you. Your investors will run. Everything you've built will crumble. The threat hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds. The other customers watched with bated breath, phones still recording. Marie stood by the counter, coffee pot frozen in mid-pour. And Lila, her face tear-streaked but chin raised, waited for Ethan's response. The ride back to the penthouse was silent. Ethan's driver navigated through the evening traffic while Lila stared out the window, her reflection ghostly against the darkening city skyline. Ethan's phone buzzed for the 20th time in an hour, but he ignored it, his jaw tight with tension. When they reached his building, the doorman rushed to shield them from the few persistent photographers who had staked out the entrance. Camera flashes sparked like lightning through the growing darkness. Inside the penthouse, Lila moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows, wrapping her arms around herself. I'm so sorry, Ethan. This is all my fault. Don't. His voice was firm but gentle. None of this is your fault. His phone buzzed again. This time, he glanced at the screen and sighed. I need to take this. Excuse me. Lila watched him step into his home office, closing the door. Even through the thick wood, she could hear the strain in his voice as he answered. Yes, Richard, I understand the board's concerns. No, it's not what the tabloids are suggesting. I'm handling it. While Ethan dealt with what seemed like an endless stream of calls, Lila found her way to the kitchen. She filled the electric kettle, needing something to do with her hands. The familiar motions of making tea helped calm her racing thoughts. Through the kitchen's open design, she could see Ethan pacing in his office, one hand running through his dark hair in frustration. He'd removed his suit jacket, and his crisp white shirt was wrinkled from the long day. Her tea had gone cold by the time he emerged, his face drawn with exhaustion. The board is in an uproar, he said, loosening his tie. And our stock dropped 3 points this afternoon. Because of me, Lila's voice cracked. I'm destroying everything you've worked for. Ethan crossed to the kitchen island, bracing his hands on the marble surface. You're not destroying anything. My father built this company on integrity and doing what's right. I won't abandon those principles now. But your board members are concerned about appearances. He gave a bitter laugh. They're worried the scandal will affect our fourth quarter earnings. Lila set down her teacup with trembling hands. Maybe I should go. Find a shelter. Or, no. The word came out sharp, almost angry. Then softer. No, I won't let you face this alone. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Ethan's face darkened as he read it. What is it? Your father works fast. There's already a story circulating about how I'm taking advantage of a vulnerable young woman. He showed her the screen. They're painting me as a predator, and you as an innocent victim. Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks. I'll tell them the truth. I'll go to the papers myself. They won't listen. Your parents have friends in high places, and the media loves a scandal. Ethan set the phone down, his expression suddenly distant, as if working through a complex problem. There might be a way, he said slowly, to protect you, your baby, and the company. Lila wiped her eyes. What do you mean? Instead of answering immediately, Ethan walked around the island. To Lila's complete surprise, he lowered himself to one knee before her. "Marry me." The words hung in the air between them. Lila's mouth fell open. "What?" "Think about it," he said, his voice taking on the calm, logical tone he probably used in business negotiations. "As my wife, you'd be protected. Your parents couldn't touch you. The scandal would die down. Just another whirlwind romance ending in marriage. The board would settle down, and most importantly, you and your baby would be safe." But that's crazy. We barely know each other." Sometimes the craziest solutions are the most practical. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'm not proposing love, Lila. I'm proposing a partnership. A way to help each other." Lila stood, needing to move. She paced the kitchen, one hand pressed to her stomach where the baby kicked restlessly. "You can't want this to be tied to me, to someone else's child. I want to do what's right." Ethan remained on one knee, watching her. "And somehow, this feels right." Another buzz from his phone made them both jump. More news alerts, more crisis messages from the board. "They won't stop," Ethan said quietly. "Your parents, the media, the vultures waiting to tear us both apart. But together, we can face them." Lila stopped pacing. In the soft kitchen light, Ethan looked both powerful and vulnerable. A man used to controlling his world, offering to share that control with her, to protect her. "You'd do this?" she whispered. "Marry a stranger? You're not a stranger. Not anymore." He stood, closing the distance between them. "I've seen your heart, Lila. Your strength, your faith. I think we could build something good." Her heart thundered in her chest. It was crazy, impossible, and yet, it made a playful, strange kind of sense. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." The next hour passed in a blur. Ethan made calls, pulled strings, found a justice of the peace willing to perform a late-night ceremony. They drove through the city's darkened streets to a small courthouse, where a sleepy-looking clerk processed their marriage license with surprising efficiency. The justice of the peace, an elderly woman with kind eyes, met them in her chambers just before midnight. She raised an eyebrow at Lila's simple sweater and leggings, at Ethan's rumpled business suit, but she asked no questions. "We are gathered here tonight," she began, her voice warm in the quiet room, "to join Ethan James Harlow and Lila Marie Grace in matrimony." Lila's hands trembled as Ethan held them. His were steady, warm, certain. The justice spoke of commitment, of facing life's challenges together, of building a future on trust and respect. "Do you, Ethan James Harlow, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was clear, unwavering. "And do you, Lila Marie Grace, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Lila looked up into Ethan's eyes, saw the same mix of determination and gentleness she'd seen that first night on the park bench. "I do. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The justice smiled as she signed their marriage certificate. Outside her chambers, the courthouse halls were dark and silent, their footsteps echoing as they walked out into the night. The morning sun painted golden streaks across New York's skyline as Ethan's private elevator ascended to the penthouse. Lila stood beside him, her borrowed coat wrapped tightly around her shoulders, her wedding ring catching the light. The simple gold band felt foreign on her finger, a symbol of their hasty midnight ceremony just hours ago. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse's marble foyer. Mrs. Chen, Ethan's housekeeper, stood waiting with her hands clasped. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Lila, but she maintained her professional composure. "Good morning, Mr. Harlow," she said, then hesitated before adding, "Mrs. Harlow." The title made Lila's cheeks flush. She watched as Mrs. Chen's gaze flickered to her pregnant belly, then quickly away. "Mrs. Chen," Ethan said, his voice carrying the quiet authority Lila was beginning to recognize. "Please inform the staff that Miss Grace is now Mrs. Harlow. She'll be making this her permanent residence." "Of course, sir." Mrs. Chen bowed slightly. Shall I have breakfast prepared? Yes, please. In the morning room. As Mrs. Chen hurried away, Lila caught the sound of whispered voices from the kitchen. The staff was already buzzing with the news. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling very small in the vast, elegant space. Ethan touched her elbow gently. Let me show you to your room, properly this time. He led her down a hallway lined with abstract paintings in muted colors. The guest room she'd stayed in the night before had been lovely, but the suite Ethan opened now took her breath away. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating cream-colored walls and plush carpeting. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, while a sitting area with elegant furniture occupied another corner. This will be your space, Ethan said. The bathroom is through there, and that door leads to a private dressing room. We'll have someone bring up your things from the guest room. Lila turned slowly, taking it all in. It's beautiful, but where will you sleep? My suite is across the hall. He gestured to double doors on the opposite wall. I thought you'd be more comfortable with your own space, at least for now. The arrangement made sense. Their marriage was one of convenience, after all. But something in his tone made Lila glance at him. For a moment, she caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Loneliness, maybe. Or memory. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. One of the maids stood in the doorway, carrying Lila's small suitcase. The girl's eyes darted between Lila and Ethan, curiosity evident on her young face. Thank you, Sophie, Ethan said. Please help Mrs. Harlow unpack and show her where to find everything she needs. As Sophie moved to comply, another staff member appeared with garment bags. The clothes you requested, sir. From Bergdorf's. Lila's eyes widened as the bags were hung in her dressing room. Ethan, you didn't have to. You'll need appropriate clothing, he said simply. We can go shopping properly later, but this will do for now. Before she could protest further, Mrs. Chen appeared to announce breakfast was ready. Ethan offered his arm, a gesture that felt both foreign and oddly natural. The morning room was flooded with light from 3 walls of windows. A table had been set with fine china and silver, fresh flowers arranged in a crystal vase. As they sat, Lila noticed 2 staff members hovering near the service door, pretending to adjust place settings while stealing glances at her. They're curious, Ethan said quietly, noting her discomfort. It will pass. A young server approached with coffee, his hands trembling slightly as he poured. When he reached Lila's cup, some coffee sloshed onto the saucer. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harlow, he exclaimed, face reddening. It's all right, Lila said softly. No harm done. The boy looked surprised at her kind tone, then grateful. He finished serving with more confidence and retreated. Mrs. Chen supervised as plates of eggs, Benedict, fresh fruit, and pastries were arranged before them. Lila couldn't help but notice how the housekeeper's efficient movements faltered whenever she looked at her new employer's wife. The staff will adjust, Ethan said once they were alone. They're not used to change. Lila picked up her fork, then set it down again. They think I'm an imposter, a gold digger who trapped you into marriage. What they think doesn't matter. Ethan's voice was firm. You're my wife now. You belong here. Do I? Lila gestured at the elegant room, the expensive china, the view of Manhattan spread out before them. This is your world, Ethan. I don't know how to live in it. You'll learn. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. What matters is that you and the baby are safe now. No one can hurt you here. As if to challenge his words, a buzz came from his phone. Ethan glanced at it, his jaw tightening. What is it? Lila asked. The media's caught wind of the marriage. He showed her the screen. Headlines screamed about the billionaire CEO's secret midnight wedding to a mysterious pregnant woman. Comments underneath ranged from curious to cruel. They'll tear us apart, Lila whispered. No, Ethan's voice was steel. They'll try, but they won't succeed. We knew this would come. We're ready for it. A movement caught Lila's eye. Through the service door's window, she could see several staff members huddled together, phones in hand, presumably reading the same news stories. Ethan followed her gaze and sighed. Mrs. Chen, he called out. The housekeeper appeared immediately. "Yes, sir? Please remind the staff about our confidentiality agreements. No speaking to the press, no social media posts, no sharing of information about this household or its occupants." "Of course, Mr. Harlow." Mrs. Chen's cheeks colored slightly at being caught. "I'll speak to them right away." When she was gone, Lila pushed her plate away, appetite gone. "Maybe I should stay in my room for a while, until things calm down." "No." Ethan's response was immediate. "This is your home now. You don't hide here." His expression softened. "We'll face this together, remember? That's what we agreed to last night." Lila nodded, touching her wedding ring. Simple as it was, it represented a promise, not of love, but of protection, of partnership against the world's judgment. Outside the windows, the morning sun continued to rise over the city, painting everything in shades of gold. Inside, in this bubble of marble and privilege, Lila sat with her new husband, both of them aware of the curious eyes watching their every move, both knowing that beyond these walls, a storm of public opinion was gathering force. But for now, there was just breakfast, the quiet clink of silver against china, and the strange, new reality of being Mrs. Harlow. Days melted into one another as Lila adjusted to her new life in the penthouse. Each morning, she woke in sheets softer than clouds, still startled by the luxury surrounding her. The staff maintained their professional distance, though their whispers grew less frequent as the days passed. On the fourth morning of their marriage, Ethan appeared at her door just as she finished dressing in another borrowed outfit. "We need to get you a proper wardrobe," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The car is waiting downstairs." Lila's cheeks flushed. "You don't have to. You're my wife now," he reminded her. "This isn't charity. It's taking care of what's mine to protect." The drive to Fifth Avenue was quiet, both lost in their thoughts. As they pulled up to an exclusive maternity boutique, Lila spotted several photographers lurking near the entrance. "Ignore them," Ethan murmured, helping her from the car. His hand rested protectively at the small of her back as camera flashes erupted around them. Inside the boutique, an elegantly dressed saleswoman greeted them with practiced warmth. "Mr. Harlow, we're honored to assist you and your wife today. We've cleared the store for your privacy." Lila felt overwhelmed as racks of clothing appeared before her, soft sweaters in cashmere, tailored dresses in silk, comfortable loungewear in the finest cotton. Each time she checked a price tag, her eyes widened in shock. "Don't look at the prices," Ethan said softly. "Choose what makes you comfortable." The saleswoman helped Lila try on outfit after outfit, each one making her feel more like she belonged in Ethan's world. She couldn't help but notice how his eyes softened when she emerged in a pale blue dress that draped gracefully over her growing belly. "That one," he said simply. "Get that one in every color they have." As they moved from store to store, the paparazzi followed at a distance. Lila tried to ignore their cameras, but their presence was a constant reminder of the scrutiny her new life was under. Walking between shops, something caught Lila's eye in a boutique window. It was a simple baby blanket, cream-colored with delicate embroidered stars along the border. She paused, touching the glass gently, imagining wrapping her baby in something so soft and perfect. Ethan noticed her hesitation but said nothing. When she moved on, he made a subtle gesture to his assistant who had been trailing them discreetly. The shopping expedition continued until Lila's feet ached. Ethan insisted on one final stop, a shoe store where she was fitted for comfortable flats and supportive slippers. By the time they returned to the penthouse, dozens of bags and boxes were being carried up by the staff. "Thank you," Lila said softly as they rode the elevator. "For everything." Ethan's response was interrupted by his phone buzzing. His expression darkened as he read the screen. "They work fast," he muttered. Already, photos of their shopping trip were online. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire's mystery, bride's shopping spree, and Harlow's pregnant wife's luxury makeover." That evening, after a quiet dinner, they sat in the penthouse's comfortable media room. Lila wore one of her new outfits, soft pants, and a matching top that finally fit properly. Ethan had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him. The television droned quietly until a familiar photo flashed across the screen, them leaving the maternity boutique. Lila's hand flew to the remote, but Ethan was faster. And in today's business news, the reporter announced, questions continue to swirl around Billionaire CEO Ethan Harlow's sudden marriage to an unknown pregnant woman. Sources close to the situation suggest the mysterious bride was homeless when Harlow took her in. Speculation about his motives ranges from genuine charitable impulses to more calculated moves to improve his company's image. Financial analysts are divided on how this unconventional union might affect Harlow Industries' stock prices. The screen went black as Ethan hit the power button. In the sudden silence, Lila's shallow breathing seemed loud. "I'm sorry," she whispered, shame burning in her chest. "Your reputation." "Stop." Ethan's voice was firm but kind. He turned to face her fully. "I don't care what they think. I've spent years letting public opinion direct my life, shape my choices." "Not anymore." Tears slipped down Lila's cheeks. "But they're right. I was homeless. I had nothing. And now look at me, dressed in clothes that cost more than I've ever earned, living in this palace in the sky. You had everything that matters." Ethan countered. "Dignity, strength, the courage to protect your child at any cost." His hand reached out, hesitated, then gently wiped away her tears. "Money can buy designer clothes and penthouses, but it can't buy character." Lila looked down at her lap, where her hands rested on her growing belly. The baby kicked, as if responding to the tension in the room. "They'll never accept me," she said softly. "They don't have to." Ethan's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "I accepted you. I chose you. That's all that matters." The baby kicked again, stronger this time. Lila smiled despite her tears, rubbing the spot gently. "Someone has opinions," she murmured. Ethan's eyes followed the movement of her hands. For a moment, something like longing crossed his face, quickly masked. A soft knock at the door interrupted the moment. Mrs. Chen entered, carrying a wrapped package. "This just arrived for Mrs. Harlow," she announced, placing it on the coffee table before discreetly withdrawing. Lila looked at Ethan questioningly. He nodded for her to open it. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unwrapped the package. Inside lay the cream-colored baby blanket she'd admired in the window, its embroidered stars catching the light. Fresh tears spilled, but these were different from before. "How did you?" she began. "I saw your face when you looked at it," he said simply. "Sometimes, the simplest things mean the most." Lila ran her fingers over the soft fabric, marveling at its gentle texture. The baby kicked again, as if approving the gift. She smiled, this time through happy tears, and pressed her hand more firmly against her belly. "Maybe we finally belong somewhere," she whispered to her unborn child, her voice full of wonder and hope. The city lights twinkled beyond the windows, and in the quiet of the media room, something shifted, not with grand gestures or declarations, but in the simple act of a mother to be sharing a moment of peace with her child, while her protector watched over them both. Lila stood before the full-length mirror, barely recognizing herself. The midnight blue gown, borrowed from Ethan's late sister's carefully preserved wardrobe, draped elegantly over her 5-month baby bump. Tiny crystals sparkled across the bodice, catching the light like stars. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, adjusting the delicate necklace Ethan had provided. Her hands trembled slightly. Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking sharp in his black tuxedo. His reflection joined hers in the mirror. "Absolutely sure. The Harlow Foundation's annual gala is the perfect place to make our first public appearance. But what if I embarrass you?" Lila smoothed the silk over her belly for the 100th time. "I don't know anything about fancy parties or important people. You know about kindness and grace," Ethan said firmly. "That's more important than knowing which fork to use." Mrs. Chen appeared with a wrap that matched Lila's dress. "The car is ready, Mr. Harlow." The ride to the Plaza Hotel was quiet, filled with Leela's nervous breathing and the soft classical music playing through the car's speakers. Ethan's hand found hers, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Remember," he said softly, "you have as much right to be there as anyone else. More, actually. This foundation exists to help people who need a second chance." Lila nodded, though her heart still fluttered like a trapped bird. When they pulled up to the hotel's entrance, camera flashes exploded around them. Ethan helped her from the car, his hand steady at her back. The ballroom took Lila's breath away. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over hundreds of elegantly dressed guests. Fresh flowers decorated every table, their sweet scent mixing with expensive perfumes and the sounds of classical music from a string quartet. "Mr. Harlow." Voices called from every direction. Ethan guided Lila through the crowd, introducing her proudly as "my wife" to board members, business associates, and society figures. Some smiled warmly, others barely concealed their judgment behind polite masks. "You're doing wonderfully," Ethan murmured as they made their way to their table. "Just be yourself." The evening progressed smoothly at first. Dinner was served, though Lila could barely eat through her nervousness, and various speakers took turns at the podium discussing the foundation's achievements over the past year. Then Marcus Reynolds, CEO of a rival company, stopped by their table, his smile sharp as a knife. "Ethan, old friend," he drawled, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I must say, you've surprised us all. First with your unusual marriage, and now bringing your latest charity case to the gala itself." The room seemed to freeze. Lila felt the blood drain from her face as Reynolds continued. "Though I suppose it's fitting. After all, isn't that what the Harlow Foundation is all about? Taking in society's unfortunates?" Ethan's chair scraped back as he stood, his face dark with anger. But before he could speak, Lila found herself rising to her feet. "You're right, Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice clear and steady despite her racing heart. "The Harlow Foundation is about helping people who need it. But more than that, it's about recognizing the dignity in every human being." The room had gone completely silent. All eyes were on her as she continued. "I may not have been born into wealth or privilege, but I know what matters most. Faith, when the world turns its back on you. Hope, when all seems lost. And compassion, real compassion, not the kind that comes with conditions or judgment." Her hand rested protectively over her belly as she spoke. "This foundation doesn't just write checks, Bash. It believes in people. It sees their worth beyond their circumstances. And yes, I was homeless when Ethan found me, but he saw me as a person, not a charity case. He showed me kindness when my own family chose pride over love." Tears shone in her eyes, but her voice remained strong. "So you can mock me if you want, Mr. Reynolds. But remember, any one of us could be one tragedy, one mistake, one twist of fate away from needing help. And when that happens, we'll need people like Ethan Harlow, who understand that true charity isn't about looking down on someone, it's about helping them stand up." For a moment, absolute silence filled the ballroom. Then, somewhere in the back, someone began to applaud. The sound spread like a wave until the entire room was filled with applause and cheers. Reynolds stood frozen, his face red with embarrassment. Ethan's expression had transformed from anger to something else entirely, a look of wonder and admiration that made Lila's heart skip. When the applause finally died down, Ethan stepped forward. "I believe my wife has said everything that needs to be said." His voice carried clearly through the room. "Shall we, my dear?" He offered his arm, and Lila took it gratefully. As they made their way toward the exit, dozens of people stopped them to shake their hands and congratulate them. Lila noticed that the smiles were warmer now, the handshakes more genuine. In the elevator, heading down to their waiting car, Ethan's hand remained protectively at her back. "That," he said softly, "was incredible." Lila's cheeks flushed. "I just spoke from my heart. Sometimes that's exactly what people need to hear." His smile was different now, softer, more personal. It made her feel warm inside, like she'd found something she didn't even know she was missing. As they stepped out into the cool night air, both still smiling, Lila felt it too, a sense that maybe, just maybe, They'd both found exactly where they belonged. Sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows, casting a golden glow across the breakfast table. Lila hummed softly as she stirred honey into her tea, still riding high from the previous evening's triumph. Ethan sat across from her, his usual morning paper replaced by his tablet, but his expression grew increasingly troubled as he scrolled through the screen. "Is everything all right?" Lila asked, noticing the deepening crease between his brows. Ethan's jaw tightened. "The media coverage from last night. It's not what we hoped for." He turned the tablet toward her. The headline made her stomach lurch. "Naive bride's emotional plea. Billionaire's calculated par move." With trembling fingers, Lila scrolled through the article. Words jumped out at her like accusations. Carefully orchestrated, manipulation of public sympathy, convenient timing. Her own speech, which had felt so genuine and heartfelt, was dissected and twisted into something calculating and false. "There's more," Ethan said quietly, pulling up another news site. "Homeless girl's fairy tale. The dark truth behind Harlow's marriage." Lila's tea grew cold as they read article after article. Some questioned her motives, suggesting she had trapped Ethan for his money. Others painted her as a simpleton being used for publicity. The worst portrayed Ethan as a manipulative businessman who had taken advantage of a vulnerable young woman for a PR stunt. "They're saying I orchestrated the whole confrontation with Reynolds," Ethan said, his voice tight with anger. "That I planted you there to give that speech." Tears welled in Lila's eyes. "But it wasn't like that at all. I spoke from my heart." "I know." Ethan reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "We know the truth." Before either could say more, Ethan's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "My lawyer wants to see us immediately." An hour later, they sat in the elegant conference room of Ethan's legal team. The lead attorney, Richard Bennett, spread several documents across the polished mahogany table. "Your parents have filed a lawsuit," he explained to Lila, his tone gentle but professional. "They're seeking custody of your unborn child." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "They can't do that," Lila whispered. "They threw me out. They wanted nothing to do with me or my baby." "They're claiming you're mentally unstable and unfit to be a mother," Bennett continued. "They assert that Mr. Harlow took advantage of your vulnerable state and coerced you into marriage to protect his public image." Ethan's hand found Lila's under the table, squeezing tightly. "This is ridiculous. They're the ones who abandoned her. Unfortunately, they've crafted a compelling narrative," Bennett said. "They paint themselves as concerned parents trying to protect their daughter from exploitation. The media coverage isn't helping. Those articles suggesting manipulation play right into their hands." Lila's free hand moved protectively to her belly. "They can't take my baby. They can't. We'll fight this," Ethan assured her. "With everything we have." Bennett shuffled through more papers. "They're requesting an emergency hearing for temporary custody once the baby is born. They're also pushing for a psychological evaluation of Lila and an investigation into the circumstances of your marriage." The words hit Lila like physical blows. Her parents, who had thrown her out into the cold, who had chosen their reputation over their own daughter, now wanted to take her child. The room began to spin. "I need some air," she gasped, struggling to her feet. Ethan followed her to the small private balcony attached to the conference room. The morning air was crisp, but Lila barely felt it through her numbness. "Why won't they just leave me alone?" she whispered. "They didn't want me. They didn't want my baby. Why are they doing this?" "Control," Ethan said quietly. "And revenge. They can't stand that you found happiness without them." A sob escaped Lila's throat. "Happiness? Look what I've done to your life. The media thinks you're a manipulator. Your reputation is in tatters. The stock prices are probably plummeting. And now this lawsuit." She wrapped her arms around herself, shaking. "I've ruined everything." "Hey," Ethan turned her gently to face him. "Look at me. You haven't ruined anything. Your whole life was perfect before you met me. Now it's a mess of scandals and lawsuits and lies." "My life wasn't perfect," Ethan said firmly. "It was empty, controlled, safe, maybe. but hollow. But Lila couldn't stop the flood of tears now. Everyone was right. I'm just a charity case who brought chaos into your world. Maybe my parents are right. Maybe I'm not fit to be a mother. Maybe. Stop. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. You are not a charity case. You are one of the strongest, most genuine people I've ever met. And you will be an amazing mother. Her tears soaked into his expensive suit jacket as she clung to him. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for cursing your life like this. Ethan's arms tightened around her. You haven't cursed anything. We're going to fight this, Lila, together. I promise you, they will not take your baby. But Lila could only sob harder, all her joy from the previous night's triumph crumbling to ash. Through the conference room windows, she could see Bennett on the phone, probably already dealing with more media calls. On Ethan's phone, notifications kept buzzing. Board members, shareholders, reporters, all demanding answers. She had thought she'd found belonging, found safety. Instead, she'd brought a storm into Ethan's carefully ordered world, and now the thunder was rolling in from all sides. I never meant for any of this to happen, she whispered against his chest. I know, he murmured, one hand stroking her hair while the other held her close. I know. They stood there on the balcony, wrapped in each other's arms, while inside, the papers bearing her parents' accusations lay spread across the table like wounds. And outside, the media circus continued to spin their story into something ugly and false. Lila's tears seemed endless as she clung to Ethan, feeling like everything was falling apart around them. The days following the lawsuit announcement felt like walking through quicksand. Every step was a struggle, and the pressure kept mounting from all sides. Ethan spent long hours in his office, fighting battles on multiple fronts while trying to keep his company stable. The morning sun barely touched his desk through the wall of windows as he reviewed the latest reports. The stock had dropped another 2 points overnight. His assistant knocked softly, entering with yet another stack of papers. The board requests an emergency meeting this afternoon, she said quietly. Ethan rubbed his temples. Schedule it for 3 o'clock. Back at the penthouse, Lila wandered through the elegant rooms like a ghost. She'd stopped watching television or reading news websites. Every headline felt like another knife in her heart. Instead, she spent hours by the window, one hand resting on her growing belly, watching the city bustle below. The household staff treated her differently now. Where there had been curiosity before, now there were worried glances and whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. She couldn't blame them. Their employer's life was unraveling, and she was the cause. That afternoon, Ethan sat facing his board of directors, their faces stern across the polished conference table. The situation is untenable. Richard Morton, the head of the board, declared. Our stock is falling, investors are nervous, and now this lawsuit. He shook his head. The solution is simple, Ethan. Annul the marriage. Ethan's jaw tightened. That's not an option. Be reasonable, another board member urged. This girl, this marriage, it's destroying everything you've built, everything your father built. I gave her my word, Ethan said firmly. I promised to protect her. And you've done that, Morton insisted. You've shown admirable charity. But now it's time to think of the company. Thousands of employees depend on us. We can't let this scandal bring everything down. Ethan stood, his voice cold. This meeting is over. Back at the penthouse, Lila made her decision. She waited until night fell, until the city lights sparkled through the windows like fallen stars. When she was sure Ethan was asleep, she crept to the guest room closet where she'd hidden a small bag days ago. Her hands trembled as she checked its contents. Just a few clothes. Her old worn coat, the baby blanket Ethan had bought her. Tears blurred her vision as she added the borrowed nightgown, freshly washed. She couldn't take anything else. Everything in this beautiful apartment belonged to Ethan's world, not hers. She wrote a note with shaking fingers. I'm sorry for all the trouble I've caused. You deserve your life back. Please don't look for me. Thank you for showing me kindness when no one else would. Lila. The penthouse was silent as she tiptoed toward the elevator. Her heart pounded so loud she was sure it would wake everyone. Just a few more steps. Going somewhere? Ethan's quiet voice made her freeze. He stood in the shadows of the hallway, still in his suit from work, as if he'd been waiting. Lila clutched her bag tighter. I have to go. You know I have to go. No. He stepped forward, his face tight with emotion. I don't know that at all. Look at what I've done to your life. The words burst out of her. Your company is suffering. Your board wants me gone. The media twists everything. Your reputation is ruined. And now my parents. She choked back a sob. I'm poison, Ethan. Everything I touch falls apart. You're wrong. His voice was fierce. You're so wrong. Please. She backed away as he approached. Let me go. Let me give you back your life. My life? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you know what my life was before you? Endless meetings, empty rooms, perfect control, and absolute loneliness. I existed, but I wasn't living. But your company can recover. He took another step closer. Stock prices rise and fall. Reputations can be rebuilt. But losing you, his voice caught. Losing you and the baby. I can't. I won't. Lila's legs trembled. You don't mean that. You can't. I do mean it. He closed the distance between them, taking her shoulders gently. When I lost Sarah and our baby, I shut down. I built walls. I turned my life into a fortress where nothing could hurt me again. His eyes glistened in the dim light. And then you appeared on that park bench, and somehow you slipped through every defense I had. Ethan. She could barely whisper his name through her tears. I married you to protect you, he continued. To give you and your child safety. But somewhere along the way, his hands moved to cup her face. Somewhere between midnight vows and morning coffee, between charity galas and quiet moments, between fighting the world and finding peace in your presence, I started living again. Really living. The bag slipped from Lila's fingers, landing with a soft thud on the carpet. I'm scared, she admitted. I'm so scared of destroying everything you care about. You are everything I care about. The words came out rough with emotion. You and this baby. The rest is just stuff. Money. Buildings. Paper. His thumbs brushed away her tears. Please don't leave. Please don't make me lose another family. Family. The word echoed in Lila's heart, breaking down the last of her resistance. She fell forward into his embrace, sobbing against his chest as his arms wrapped tightly around her. I won't let them take our baby, he whispered fiercely into her hair. I won't let anyone hurt you again. But you have to stay. You have to trust me. Trust us. She nodded against his chest, unable to speak through her tears. His heart beat strong and steady under her ear, his arms solid and safe around her. What had started as an act of protection, as a marriage of convenience and compassion, had grown into something neither of them had expected, something that felt remarkably like love. They stood there in the quiet hallway, holding each other as if they might never let go, while outside the city lights sparkled and somewhere far below, the night moved on, carrying them forward together into whatever storms might come. The courthouse loomed before them, its stone steps crowded with reporters and photographers. Camera flashes burst like lightning as Ethan helped Lila from the car, shielding her with his body. She gripped his hand tightly, her other palm resting protectively over her growing belly. Just breathe, Ethan whispered, guiding her through the chaos. I'm right here. Inside the courtroom, polished wooden benches creaked under the weight of spectators and press. The air felt thick with tension and the scratching of pencils on notepads. Lila's parents sat rigidly in the front row, their faces set in stern disapproval. Margaret Grace wouldn't even look at her daughter. Lila's hands trembled as she smoothed her simple navy dress. It was new. Ethan had insisted on buying her proper clothes for the hearing. Now, sitting beside him at the defendant's table, she felt like a child playing dress-up, small and out of place in this formal setting. Their lawyer, a kind-faced woman named Patricia Morton, squeezed Lila's shoulder. Remember what we practiced. Just tell the truth. The bailiff's voice boomed through the room. All rise. The Honorable Judge Michael Sanders presiding. Everyone stood as the judge entered, his black robes swishing as he took his seat. He peered over his reading glasses at the packed courtroom. Be seated. We're here today regarding the matter of Grace versus Harlow, a petition for custody of an unborn child. Let's proceed. The Grace's lawyer, Andrew Peterson, rose first. His expensive suit matched his slick demeanor as he approached the podium. Your Honor, this case is about protecting an unborn child from an unstable situation. My clients, Margaret and Charles Grace, have grave concerns about their daughter's judgment and the circumstances of her hasty marriage to Ethan Harlow. Lila felt sick as Peterson continued, his words cutting like knives. We will show that Miss Grace, Mrs. Harlow now, was homeless, penniless, and vulnerable when Mr. Harlow took advantage of her situation. This marriage is nothing more than a publicity stunt by a billionaire CEO known for manipulating the media. The child deserves to be raised in a stable, traditional home with loving grandparents, not in a sham marriage born of desperation. Tears burned behind Lila's eyes. Ethan's hand found hers under the table, his thumb stroking her knuckles soothingly. Peterson called his first witness, Margaret Grace. Lila's mother perched primly on the witness stand, her pearl necklace gleaming. We only want what's best for our daughter and grandchild, she said, her voice trembling with calculated emotion. Lila has always been impulsive, throwing away her future, living on the streets. It shows her lack of judgment. And then this sudden marriage, to a man she barely knows. We're terrified for that baby's well-being. And Mr. Harlow, Peterson prompted. What are your thoughts on your daughter's husband? Margaret's lips thinned. He's using her, a man in his position, with his reputation, suddenly marrying a homeless pregnant girl. It's obvious he's trying to repair his public image. Our grandchild shouldn't be part of some corporate strategy. The questioning continued, painting a picture of Lila as naive and unstable, of Ethan as calculating and manipulative. Charles Grace testified next, his testimony reinforcing his wife's concerns with stern authority. When Peterson called Lila to the stand, her legs felt like water. She forced herself to walk steadily, to hold her head high as she was sworn in, but his questions came like arrows. Mrs. Harlow, isn't it true you were sleeping on a park bench when you met Mr. Harlow? Yes, but... And you moved into his penthouse that very night, correct? He was helping me. Then married him within days, despite knowing nothing about him except his wealth and status? That's not why. Isn't it convenient that a homeless pregnant woman managed to secure herself a billionaire husband so quickly? Objection. Patricia stood, badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Sanders said. Watch your tone, Mr. Peterson. Lila gripped the witness stand, her voice shaking but determined. I married Ethan because he showed me kindness when my own parents threw me out. Because he treated me like a human being worthy of dignity. Because he, her voice caught, because he cared about my baby when no one else did. The afternoon wore on. A parade of witnesses, including business associates and household staff, all questioned about the nature of Ethan and Lila's relationship. Finally, Patricia called Ethan to the stand. He walked forward with his usual quiet confidence, but Lila could see the tension in his shoulders. After being sworn in, he sat straight and tall, meeting Peterson's hostile gaze steadily. Mr. Harlow, Peterson began. Isn't it true your company was facing public relations issues before this marriage? My company's reputation has always been strong, Ethan replied calmly. Any recent issues stem from people like yourself trying to twist an act of basic human decency into something scandalous. So you deny that marrying Miss Grace was a calculated business move? Completely. Then perhaps you can explain to the court why a man in your position would marry a homeless pregnant woman he just met. The courtroom fell silent, waiting. Ethan's hands clasped together in his lap, and for the first time, his composed expression cracked slightly. 5 years ago, he began, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. I was engaged to be married. Sarah, my fiancée, was 4 months pregnant with our first child. He paused, swallowing hard. We were so happy, so ready to be a family. Then one rainy night, a drunk driver, his voice roughened. I lost them both. Lila pressed her hands to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. She'd known about his loss, but hearing him speak of it publicly, seeing the raw pain still etched in his features, broke her heart. After that, I buried myself in work, built walls, convinced myself I didn't need love or family to be successful. Ethan's gaze found Lila's across the courtroom. Then I saw Lila on that bench, protecting her unborn child, even though it cost her everything. She reminded me of what matters most in this world. Not money, not reputation, not business success, but love, faith, the courage to choose what's right over what's easy. He turned back to Peterson, his voice strengthening. I married Lila because in her, I saw everything I'd lost hope in: goodness, strength, and the chance to be part of a real family again. It wasn't a business move. It was an act of faith, of love. And I thank God every day that she trusted me enough to say yes. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Even Peterson seemed momentarily stunned, his next question dying on his lips. Lila couldn't stop her tears, but now they were tears of gratitude, of awe at the man who just laid his heart bare to protect her and their unconventional family. The judge's gavel cracked through the silence. I think we'll recess for the day, he announced. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. But no one moved immediately, still caught in the spell of Ethan's testimony. Lila watched him step down from the witness stand. His usual mask of control slipped just enough to show the cost of such vulnerability. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, something shifted. Something deeper than protection, stronger than arrangement, truer than either of them had dared to hope for. The ancient courthouse hallway seemed to breathe with quiet whispers and echoing footsteps. Afternoon sunlight filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Lila stood near one of these windows, her arms wrapped protectively around herself, watching dust motes dance in the golden light. She heard Ethan's measured footsteps before she saw him. The sound was as familiar to her now as her own heartbeat, steady, reliable, grounding. He approached carefully, as though afraid she might startle and run. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, coming to stand beside her. Lila turned to face him, taking in the slight dishevelment of his usually perfect appearance. His tie slightly loosened, a strand of dark hair falling across his forehead. His testimony had stripped away some of his careful polish, leaving him more human, more vulnerable. "I didn't know," she whispered. "About Sarah, about the baby. I mean, I knew, but hearing you speak about them." She trailed off, unable to find the right words. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I haven't spoken about them in years. Not like that. It was brave of you. It was necessary." They fell quiet, watching a young family pass by. A mother holding a toddler's hand, the child's giggles bouncing off the austere walls. Lila's hand drifted to her swollen belly, feeling the gentle movement within. "I'm terrified," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Not just about the hearing, but about everything. About failing as a mother, about disappointing you, about not being enough for this world you live in." Ethan turned to her fully then, his expression intense. "Lila, please, let me finish." She took a shaky breath. "I'm terrified because I never expected this. I never expected you. That night on the bench, I was ready to lose everything. Instead, I found." Her voice caught, but she forced herself to continue. "I found someone who showed me what real strength looks like. Who taught me that kindness isn't weakness. Who made me feel safe for the first time in my life." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. "And now I'm most terrified because somewhere between that first night and this moment, I've fallen in love with you, really in love with you. Not because you saved me, or because you're rich, or because you're protecting us, but because you're you, because you bring me tea when I can't sleep, because you bought that baby blanket I liked without telling me, because you look at me sometimes like I'm worth something precious." Ethan stood completely still, his face a study in contained emotion. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "You are precious. I know you married me to help me," Lila continued. "I know it wasn't about love, and that's okay. You've given us so much already, but I needed you to know, before whatever happens in that courtroom, that you've become everything to me. You and this baby." She finally fell silent, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he must hear it. The hallway seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Ethan moved slowly, deliberately, until he stood directly in front of her. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs gently wiping away her tears. His eyes searched hers, as though looking for something vital. "When Sarah died," he said quietly, "I locked away every soft part of myself. I thought that was strength, being untouchable, unreachable. Then I found you, shivering on that bench, protecting your child with nothing but faith and courage. And you showed me what real strength looks like." His touch was infinitely gentle as he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I've been fighting it, this feeling, telling myself it was just protection, just duty. But seeing you in that courtroom today, hearing you defend our marriage, watching you hold your head high despite everything, Lila, you've brought every locked-away piece of me back to life." She hardly dared breathe. "What are you saying?" Instead of answering with words, Ethan lowered his head and kissed her. It was nothing like their brief kiss at their hasty wedding. This was soft, tender, full of everything they'd both been afraid to acknowledge. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious, while hers gripped his suit jacket, anchoring herself to this moment, this truth. When they finally parted, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he whispered. "Not because you needed protection, or because it was the right thing to do. I love you because you're you. Because you pray over our breakfast. Because you leave little notes in my briefcase. Because you look at the world with such hope despite everything it's thrown at you." Lila gave a watery laugh, joy bubbling up inside her. "Really? Really?" He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "We're going to win. This, Lila. And then we're going to be a real family. You, me, and this baby. If that's what you want." "It's all I want," she whispered. The courthouse bells chimed, signaling the end of recess. Around them, people began filing back toward the courtroom. Ethan straightened, adjusting his tie, but his eyes never left Lila's face. "Ready?" he asked, extending his hand. Lila took it, their fingers intertwining naturally, perfectly. "Ready." They walked back to the courtroom together, hand in hand, steps perfectly matched. The whispers and stares of others seemed to fade away, unimportant now. What had started as an act of protection had bloomed into something real, something precious, a love born of choice and trust and faith. As they approached the heavy courtroom doors, Lila squeezed Ethan's hand. He squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was every promise they'd just made to each other. Whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger now in the truth of their love than they had ever been in the pretense of arrangement. The courtroom hummed with tension as Judge Harold Green settled into his chair, his expression carefully neutral. Lila's grip on Ethan's hand tightened as the judge shuffled his papers, the rustling sound impossibly loud in the hushed chamber. After careful consideration of the evidence and testimony presented, Judge Green began, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the packed courtroom. "I find myself deeply troubled by the actions that have brought us here today." Lila's parents sat straight-backed in their expensive clothes, confidence radiating from their posture. Their lawyer leaned forward eagerly. "Mr. and Mrs. Grace," the judge continued, turning his stern gaze toward them, "you have presented your case as one of parental concern. You've argued that your daughter is unfit to make decisions about her unborn child's future. You've questioned the legitimacy of her marriage and cast aspersions on Mr. Harlow's character." The judge paused, removing his reading glasses and placing them carefully on the bench before him. "However, what I've witnessed in this courtroom tells a very different story." Lila felt Ethan's thumb brush soothingly across her knuckles as Judge Green continued. "I've seen a young woman who, when faced with immense pressure to abandon her principles, chose instead to stand firm in her convictions. Miss Grace, Mrs. Harlow, demonstrated remarkable courage in protecting her unborn child, even at the cost of her own comfort and security. Tears welled in Lila's eyes as the judge's words washed over her. Beside her, Ethan sat perfectly still, his presence steady and unwavering. As for Mr. Harlow, the judge's gaze shifted to Ethan. His actions speak to a man of character, not opportunism. When confronted with someone in need, he chose compassion over convenience. His testimony regarding his past loss and his current marriage rang with authenticity that this court finds compelling. Judge Green's expression hardened as he turned back to the Graces. What troubles me most deeply is not the circumstances of Mrs. Harlow's pregnancy or her marriage, but rather the actions of those who should have provided her with support and understanding during a vulnerable time. Lila's mother's face flushed red, while her father's jaw clenched visibly. Parents who would cast out their child, who would attempt to force her into decisions against her conscience, and who would then seek to wrest control of her unborn child through legal manipulation. These are not actions this court can condone. The judge's voice grew stronger, filled with quiet authority. The petition for custody of the unborn child is hereby dismissed. Furthermore, this court finds no merit in the allegations regarding the legitimacy of the Harlow's marriage or Mr. Harlow's motives. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Lila's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob of relief. Ethan's arm slipped around her shoulders, drawing her close. Mrs. Harlow. Judge Green's voice softened slightly. This court recognizes your right to make decisions regarding your child's future. Your marriage appears to be one of mutual respect and growing affection, providing a stable environment for your coming child. He raised his gavel. This case is dismissed. Court is adjourned. The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the chamber, but it was quickly drowned out by the eruption of voices. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Photographers' cameras clicked rapidly, and the general audience buzzed with excitement. Lila turned to Ethan, tears streaming freely down her face now. "It's over," she whispered. "We won." Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "You won, sweetheart. Your strength won this." Their lawyer began gathering papers, offering quiet congratulations. Across the aisle, Lila caught a glimpse of her parents' rigid backs as they hurried from the courtroom, their lawyer trailing behind them. The celebration was cut short as court officers began ushering everyone toward the exits. Outside, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and camera crews, all surging forward as Ethan and Lila emerged. "Mr. Harlow, what's your response to the ruling?" "Mrs. Harlow, will you make a statement? How do you answer critics who claim this marriage is a publicity stunt?" The questions came rapid fire, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. Ethan raised a hand, and somehow his quiet authority made the crowd fall silent. "My wife and I are grateful for Judge Green's wisdom today," he began, his voice clear and steady. "But I want to address something larger than just this ruling." Lila watched him, feeling the strength in his arm around her waist, seeing the conviction in his face. "When I first met Lila, I saw someone whose faith and courage far outweighed her circumstances. What began as an offer of help has grown into something profound and true. We stand here today not because of scandal or manipulation, but because love sometimes finds us in unexpected ways." He looked down at Lila, his eyes soft. "Our marriage may have started as protection, but it has become a partnership built on mutual respect, shared values, and yes, love. We look forward to welcoming our child into a home filled with faith, understanding, and joy." The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Cameras flashed again, but this time capturing smiles and tears of joy. Several reporters were dabbing at their eyes, their cynicism momentarily forgotten in the face of such genuine emotion. Ethan's driver had brought the car around, and they made their way through the crowd, accepting congratulations and well wishes. As they settled into the back seat, Lila felt the tension of the past weeks finally begin to melt away. "Take us home, James," Ethan instructed the driver, then raised the privacy screen. Lila leaned against him, exhausted but content. I can hardly believe it's really over. Believe it, Ethan said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. You're safe now, both of you. His hand rested gently on her growing belly. Through the tinted windows, they could see the city sliding past, its familiar streets somehow looking brighter, more welcoming. The afternoon sun caught the building's windows, making them sparkle like diamonds. You know, Lila said thoughtfully, when you found me that night, I was praying for a miracle. Ethan's arms tightened around her. So was I, he admitted quietly. I just didn't know it yet. They rode in comfortable silence, both too emotionally drained for more words, but filled with a deep sense of peace. The fear and uncertainty that had haunted their early days together had been replaced by something solid and true, a foundation of trust, faith, and love on which to build their future. The car wound its way through the city streets, carrying to them home to their penthouse, to the life they would now truly begin building together. Not as a billionaire and his charity case, not as protector and protected, but as partners, equals, bound together by choice and love and faith in each other. The late spring sunshine streamed through the penthouse windows, casting warm patterns across mountains of gift boxes and pastel-colored bags. Lila sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, surrounded by tiny onesies, soft blankets, and more baby items than she could count. I still can't believe people sent all these gifts, she said, carefully folding a hand-knitted sweater from one of Ethan's employees. Complete strangers, most of them. Ethan smiled from his spot on the couch, watching her sort through the presents. Your story touched people's hearts. They want to be part of this. A card fell from one of the packages, and Lila picked it up to read. To the couple who reminded us that love and faith still exist in this world. Congratulations on your baby. Her voice caught slightly. It's from someone in Ohio. The past few weeks had brought a flood of support. Their courthouse story had gone viral, inspiring people across the country. Letters and packages arrived daily, filled with good wishes and baby gifts. Even some of Ethan's board members, who had once pressured him to end the marriage, had sent elaborate presents. Ethan checked his watch and stood up. Speaking of gifts, I have something to show you. He held out his hands to help her up, which took some maneuvering given her now prominent belly. Another surprise. Lila raised an eyebrow. You've already done so much. This one's special. He led her down the hallway, stopping at a door that had been locked for weeks. Close your eyes. Lila complied, hearing the door open. Ethan guided her forward a few steps, his hands gentle on her shoulders. Okay, he said softly. Look. Lila opened her eyes and gasped. The former guest room had been transformed into a beautiful nursery. Soft cream-colored walls were adorned with hand-painted clouds and stars. An elegant wooden crib stood beneath a window, its bedding in gentle shades of mint green and yellow. A comfortable rocking chair waited in one corner, next to a bookshelf already filled with children's stories. Ethan, she whispered, taking in every detail. Did you do all this yourself? He nodded, looking slightly bashful. I wanted it to be personal, not something hired decorators put together. Lila moved slowly through the room, touching everything with trembling fingers. There was a changing table with all supplies perfectly organized, a small dresser with tiny clothes already sorted and put away. Then her eyes fell on something familiar draped over the side of the crib. The blanket, she breathed, reaching out to touch the soft fabric. From the store window that day. I saw how much you loved it, Ethan said quietly. I went back for it the next morning. Tears spilled down Lila's cheeks as she clutched the blanket to her chest. It was just as beautiful as she remembered. Cream-colored wool with delicate pink and blue flowers embroidered along the edges. Hey now, Ethan murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind. These better be happy tears. They are, Lila managed through her sobs. When I think about where I was a few months ago, sleeping on that park bench, and now. Ethan turned her gently to face him, wiping her tears with his thumbs. You'll never have to face anything alone again. I promise you that. Whatever comes, I'm right here beside you. Lila leaned into his embrace, feeling the baby kick between them. We're so lucky to have you. They stood there in the peaceful nursery, basking in the moment, until Lila suddenly tensed. "Oh, what's wrong?" Ethan pulled back, concern etched on his face. Lila pressed a hand to her belly, eyes wide. I think my water just broke." "Now?" Ethan's normally composed expression gave way to panic. "But you're not due for another week." "Try telling that to the baby," Lila said, grimacing, as the first real contraction hit. Ethan snapped into action. He grabbed the hospital bag they'd prepared, helped Lila change quickly, and called down to have the car brought around. His driver, James, was already waiting when they reached the lobby. "To Mount Sinai Hospital," Ethan instructed, helping Lila into the back seat. "And hurry, please." As they pulled away from the curb, Lila squeezed Ethan's hand through another contraction. Despite the pain, she couldn't help but smile at his nervous energy. The usually unflappable CEO was practically bouncing in his seat. "It's really happening," she whispered, both excited and scared. "We've got this," Ethan assured her, though his voice shook slightly. Together, the car sped through the evening traffic, carrying them toward the hospital and the next chapter of their journey. The delivery room buzzed with focused energy as nurses moved efficiently around them. Lila gripped Ethan's hand tightly, her face flushed with effort. Hours of labor had brought them to this moment. "You're doing beautifully," the doctor encouraged. "One more big push." Ethan pressed his forehead against Lila's temple. "You're the strongest person I know," he whispered. "Almost there." With a final determined effort, Lila pushed, and suddenly the room filled with the powerful cry of a newborn baby. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, lifting up the tiny bundle. "A girl," Lila breathed, tears streaming down her face. The nurses quickly cleaned and swaddled the baby before placing her in Lila's arms. She was perfect, tiny fingers, rosebud lips, and a dusting of dark hair like her mother's. "Would you like to hold your daughter?" Lila asked softly, looking up at Ethan. His hands trembled as he carefully took the baby, cradling her close to his chest. The tough businessman who commanded boardrooms was gone, replaced by a father seeing his child for the first time. Tears spilled freely down his cheeks as he gazed at his daughter's face. "You've given me my second chance," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. The weight of his past grief, the loss of his fiancée and unborn child years ago, seemed to lift as he held this new miracle. Lila watched them together, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. The girl who had once huddled alone on a park bench, rejected by her own parents, had found her true family. God had answered her prayers in ways she never could have imagined. Outside the hospital windows, the city was abuzz with their story. News vans lined the street, reporters eager to share what many were calling New York's greatest love story: the homeless pregnant girl and the billionaire who chose love over reputation. But here in this quiet room, none of that mattered. "What should we name her?" Ethan asked, sitting carefully on the edge of Lila's bed. "Faith," Lila answered without hesitation. "Because that's what brought us together." Ethan smiled, gently touching their daughter's cheek. "Faith Harlow." "It's perfect." 3 days later, they prepared to take Faith home. The media gathered outside the hospital entrance, but Ethan had arranged for extra security to ensure their privacy. Lila sat in a wheelchair as required by hospital policy, baby Faith bundled securely in her arms. Ethan walked beside them, one hand protectively on Lila's shoulder. As they emerged through the hospital doors, camera flashes erupted, but the security team kept the press at a respectful distance. Ethan helped Lila and Faith into their waiting car, then walked around to the other side. The drive home was peaceful, their little family cocooned together in the back seat. Faith slept soundly, while Lila leaned against Ethan's shoulder. The penthouse that had once felt so empty to him now held all the love and purpose he'd been missing. When they arrived home, Ethan carried both their bags, while Lila cradled Faith. The elevator ride to the penthouse was quiet, filled with contentment. As they stepped into their home, sunlight streamed through the windows, seeming to welcome them. "Welcome home, Faith," Lila whispered, while Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them. They stood together in the warm light, no longer the lonely billionaire and the homeless girl, but a family bound by faith, love, and the promise of tomorrow. "Thank you for being here." If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow, I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.